In this video, we're going to be comparing California to Texas, Florida, and New York. And I'm going to talk to you guys about which state is going to make the most sense for you guys to move to if you're a nurse. So I actually came up with a couple of slides that I want to go over, and I'm going to be talking specifically about like employee laws in all of these states. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about are lunch breaks, whether there's laws that are surrounding nurses' lunch breaks. We're going to be talking about overtime laws in every one of these states. We're going to be talking about parental leave. We're also going to be talking about the pay. So there's a big difference in pay amongst these four states that we're going to be discussing today. Let's go over some of the states that I was discussing at the beginning of the video. All right, employee laws. All right, let's talk about the employee laws. The first thing that I want to talk about is lunch breaks. So if you're going to compare all of the states, first let's talk about California. So if you're an employee in California, regardless of whether you're a nurse or not, employees are given a meal or lunch break for a minimum of 30 minutes for shifts longer than 5 hours. So that means that if you're working a 12-hour shift, you are going to get two 30-minute breaks, which is equal to 1 hour. And that means you're going to have an uninterrupted break. However, it's going to be unpaid, but it's going to be uninterrupted, and they have to give it to you. If you are in Florida, though, employers aren't required to offer meal or rest breaks, whether they're paid or unpaid, to their employees. So it's not required, which means you have to find an employer that's willing to give you a lunch break or offer their employees lunch breaks, because it's not a requirement in the state of Florida. Now, if you're in Texas, there are no Texas labor laws that are related to lunch breaks. There's no requirement for a certain number of breaks to be had or given during a 7 or 8 hour shift. But after looking this up, it seems to be common that in the state of Texas, most workplaces do offer one 30-minute meal break and two 15-minute rest breaks in that time frame. If you're in New York, if you're an hourly employee in the state of New York who works more than 6 hours, and those 6 hours extend over the noonday, meaning like if those hours are after 11 a.m., then you are entitled to an unpaid meal break of 30 minutes. So you are given a 30-minute meal break in the state of New York, just like in the state of California. All right, so the state of New York and the state of California are going to give you that 30-minute meal break. Now let's talk about like paid sick leave. If you're in California, you're going to be provided and allowed to use at least 24 hours of paid sick leave per year. And that means that if you're working 8-hour shifts, you get a minimum of 3 paid sick days annually. And per diem employees in this case are also able to benefit from this law. So if you're an employee of California, and I actually wrote this in a newsletter, you can take paid time off as a per diem employee. So, and I made a newsletter about this and a lot of people were questioning it. I also talked about like healthcare benefits, and I'm not going to be talking about that in this video, but if you're a California employee and you work per diem in the state of California, you do qualify for health insurance. And there are many hospitals that abide by this law, but then there's some hospitals that work it into their contract to not provide you with health insurance. So that's where you'll see some of the differences in here. There's nurses that are working for UC Davis, UCSF, UCLA that are not provided health insurance if they're per diem employees. But Sutter Health is going to be one of the hospitals that's going to provide their nurses who are working per diem with health insurance. So if you are going to be applying for a job as a per diem nurse, you should ask the HR department or the HR recruiter if they provide health insurance coverage to their per diem employees, okay? Because you might be able to get almost all of the benefits that a full-time or permanent staff member is receiving, except for vacation leave, because you're not going to get that as a per diem employee, but you will be getting paid sick leave and you will be getting health insurance coverage. You might also be getting your 401k contributions and matching, and you will also probably be getting a pension depending on which hospital you're going to be working for. So you can get all these 4 benefits as a per diem employee. In addition to that, you're also going to be getting paid higher. So that's something you might want to be looking at if you're going to be looking for a job as a per diem nurse in the state of California. So if you're in the state of Florida, Florida's sick leave laws don't even require employers to provide paid sick leave, but companies are able to offer this. That's the downside of working in Florida, aside from all the other things that I'm going to mention in this video. And if you're in Texas, there's also no law that forces private companies to give their employees paid or unpaid sick leave. But if you're working for the government, then they have to give you sick days. So if you're a full-time government employee, then you'll get 8 hours of sick leave for every month that you work. Now, if you're in New York, employers with 5 to 99 employees must provide up to 40 hours of paid sick leave per calendar year. And then if you're working for an employer that has 100 or more employees, which is basically almost any hospital you can think of in New York, then they need to provide up to 56 hours of paid sick leave per calendar year, which is huge. That's actually, I think that's even better than it is in California. So when it comes to paid sick leave, New York wins in this case. Now let's talk about overtime. So you already know from watching my videos that there is no state like the state of California when it comes to overtime. In California, this is just a summary of most of the things that employees get when it comes to overtime in California. There's way more than this, but let's talk about some of them. If you're an employee who works longer than 12 hours in any specific workday, that means if today is Tuesday and you come in at 8 a.m. and you work past 8 p.m., then you are supposed to be paid double your regular rate beyond those 12 hours. And for all hours worked in excess of 8 hours on the 7th consecutive day of work. So if you're working every single day of the week, on the 7th day of the week, regardless of whether you're a Kaiser employee or not, on the 7th consecutive day of work in that work week, right? Let's say it starts on a Sunday. So you got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On that Saturday, anything after your 8th hour of work will be paid at double your regular rate. Now, you also get paid 1.5 times your rate if you work between the 8th hour and the 12th hour in one workday. So if you're, let's say you're scheduled to work 8-hour shifts, anything above the 8th hour and less than 12 hours is going to be paid at 1.5 times your regular rate. You should also understand that it doesn't apply to every type of nurse, because if you're a shift employee, it's different. And me and Oliver, we had a conversation about this in our video. But if you are working 12-hour shifts and you are hired to work 12-hour shifts, most hospitals, if not all, but most hospitals will not pay you the time and a half from the 8th hour of work to the 12th hour, but will still be required to pay you double time after the 12th hour of work. And also, in addition to that, just like every other state in the country, if you work 40 hours or more in that work week, you're going to be paid at time and a half. Now, if you look at all of the other states below this, Florida, Texas, and New York, they only pay time and a half after the 40 hours of work. There are only a select few states that pay you time and a half after the 8th hour of work. And it's disappointing because it's beneficial for the employers, because employees would be less likely to leave a location if they were to get these benefits. So most states are only going to pay time and a half after the 40th hour of work. But you have Alaska, you have, again, like I said, California has the time and a half and the double time. You have Colorado, but only after the 12th hour, they will give you time and a half. And then you have Nevada, which is surprising, right? Like, you would think Nevada would not be on this list, but it is. And that's it. So in reality, after the 8th hour, it's only Alaska and Nevada that will give you the time and a half besides California. So that's pretty disappointing, but I mean, it's just the reality. Like, there's no federal law that gives people time and a half after the 8th hour of work. It's only on a state-by-state basis. And you guys already know California, when it comes to employee laws in general, most employee laws, it's going to be the best of the best. Okay, let's go over parental leave. California. If you're in California, if you look this up, California gets an A+ or an A when it comes to parental leave. If you're in California, it's one of a handful of states with a paid family leave program. And new parents can receive partial wages from the state while taking time off to bond with the child. Now, the state here pays 60% of most employees' wages, up to a maximum set by the state, which is $1,620 per week. And this is tax-free, so you're not going to be taxed. So just think about it. Right now, I'm bringing home somewhere around $3,300 every 2 weeks. Right? That's for working less than 20 hours a week, which means that if I were to go on parental leave, well, first of all, I'd have to work an average of like 24 hours a week to qualify, because that's the minimum. And that's the minimum for most states that actually have some type of paternity leave. But you need 1,250 hours in order to qualify for this type of parental leave in California. And once you do take your leave, though, that's $3,240 every 2 weeks. That is going to be tax free. They're not going to tax that amount of money. And then you can do this for, it says up to 6 weeks, but I believe now it's actually up to 8 weeks. So you need to really look into this, because Monica was off for a total of 4 months and she was able to get her pay for the entire 4 months. And I was out of work for 2 months paid and 1 month unpaid. So you're allowed to go for a full, I believe it's like 12 weeks if you're a father, and you can take 8 of those weeks paid, but the other 4 weeks are going to be unpaid, right? That's if you're the male in the relationship. And then if you're a female who just delivered a baby, if you had a vaginal delivery, don't quote me on this, I made a video about it a while ago, but it's something like 18 weeks or something like that. And if you have a C-section, it's a bit longer than that. It's like almost 20 weeks, basically. So that's California. Now, if you're in Florida, you get up to 7 weeks of paid maternity leave immediately following the birth of a child. And you get up to 80 hours, which is 2 weeks, of paid paternal leave within the first 12 months of the birth of your child or an adoption of a child. That's better than I expected. I thought they weren't going to offer anything at all in Florida. However, Texas does not mandate any kind of maternity leave or parental leave, paid or unpaid, which is, in my opinion, like, this may sound political to some of you, but if you don't believe in abortion, which is, you know, how Texas politics are, then I would have assumed that they would have had better parental leave in place, but they don't. They don't even have parental leave, which is pretty disappointing in my opinion, because if you want people to bring children to birth, then I would have expected them to have better parental leaves than this. Now, if you're in New York though, you're eligible to take up to 12 weeks of paid time off to care for your family. And this sounds great, right? But the amount of money that you get on a weekly basis is nowhere near California. However though, you still get up to 12 weeks, which is great. And your job is protected when you're on your leave. So you're not going to be fired or laid off while you're on your leave. And then workers can take paid family leave to bond with a child within 12 months of birth, adoption, or foster placement. As you can see here, California would be number 1. New York is going to be number 2. And then Florida is going to be number 3. And then Texas is probably going to be at the end of this list, even if you include every other state on the list. All right, now let's talk about nurse salary. And I'm actually going to be showing you guys the salaries from the spreadsheet that I have so we can compare those two. But obviously, you know that California is going to be the highest paying of all of the states on this list here and in this video, as well as any other state you can think of. Now, people are going to say, yeah, but the cost of living in California is really high. Yeah, it is high. But again, if you've watched any of my videos, if you're living in Northern California, even with the increased cost of living, because your salary is going to be so much higher, you are still going to be living a lot more comfortably than people in the Midwest and in the South. And if you move to a location that's farther away from the Bay Area, you're definitely going to be living a lot more comfortable than anybody in the South or in the Midwest. Then Florida is the 4th highest paying state on this list. Texas is 3rd, and New York is going to be the 2nd highest paying. But it's also going to be lower on the list of all states when you account for the cost of living, because it's really expensive to live in New York. I'm going to actually compare all of these states so you guys can see what the differences are in terms of like salary, cost of living, and all those things. I'm going to only compare these 4 states, but if you have the spreadsheet, you can compare more than 4 states. You can compare all of the states you want. Now, on the left-hand side, I'm going to select the states that I want to compare, right? So I'm going to compare California. I'm going to compare Florida. I'm going to be comparing New York. Here it is. And I'm going to be comparing Texas, right? Okay, so just those 4 states. If you guys don't know what this spreadsheet does, is you can select cities that you want to compare for different professions if you want. But the role that we're going to be comparing here is just RNs. If you want to look at other professions, you can. And you know what? I actually have an updated list for this one that has like maybe 20 more professions in addition to this. And I thought I had pharmacists in here, but it's not included in here. So I will have that in the next spreadsheet update that I put out. Okay, so on the right hand side, you're gonna see it says sort by, and you can actually sort it by the columns here on the top, right? And again, this is all based on home prices from July 2023, as you can see in the top left over here, right? And I'm going to have all of this information updated based on like the most recent numbers, which is going to be like December 2023 to January 2024. I forgot to mention, I'm going to be including the rental prices here because a lot of people have been asking me why I don't have rent prices in these spreadsheets, and it's because it's a lot harder to find accurate data on rental prices, but the spreadsheet still has a lot of the rent prices in most of these cities. So you'll be able to find out which place makes most sense for you if you're looking to buy or if you're looking to rent. But in the meantime, let's look at what we have here though. So let's say you are a nurse and you're looking to work in one of these 4 states, California, Florida, New York, or Texas. And I'm going to show you what it looks like based on median salary. The median salary is obviously going to be higher in California. That's what you see over here. But how much are you actually going to be left with if you only look at the median salary? Well, if you look to the right, left over annually after taxes, you're only going to have 53,000 in this city, 17,000 left over in this city, and negative 28,000 in this city, and that's Sunnyvale, California. Because even though you're making $163,000 per year, your home prices are $1.8 million. There's no way you're going to even be able to afford that. And if you do manage to afford it and you're paying out of your pocket, you're going to be in the negative 28,000 range every single month, which obviously you're not going to get a mortgage approved if you're only making that much. But I'm just showing you how much you'll have left over if you actually are trying to pay for that mortgage with the salary you earn. But let's do this instead. Let's look at leftover annually, right? Because you want to know how much you're going to be left over after your taxes are paid and your mortgage payments are made. So again, I've mentioned this before. If you're in California, even with the cost of living, you're still going to have more income at the end of the year, at the end of the month, at the end of the week. Okay, so in Vallejo, California, you're going to be left with $67,000 on an annual basis. However, there are other factors you need to take a look at. For example, if you move to the right, you're going to see that right here, you're going to look at the violent crime rate and the property crime. So 0 means it's really good and 100 means it's the worst of the worst. That's also information that I put into the spreadsheet. If you're looking to move to a certain location and you want to know if it's safe for you, then you can look at the violent crime rate and the property crime rate. And if you sort this, so let's go by violent crime, for example, and you want to go descending, right? Look at that. Oakland, California, obviously, is the worst. And if you know anything about California, you'll know that Oakland is one of the worst places to live in if you're thinking about cost of living, if you're thinking about crime rate, and many other factors, because it's a very dangerous place to live. So if you're trying to raise a family, don't move to Oakland, California. And then we have, which is surprising, I didn't think this was going to be at the top of the list, but Miami, Florida. And again, these aren't like all of the cities in the country. These are just cities where the Bureau of Labor Statistics receives salary data for these professions, or I should say for the nursing profession specifically. Because if I were to change this and I would just go to like cardiovascular technologist, then you might not have all of the cities. You see how that changed, right? Let's see. So the 2 popular cities, obviously Oakland and Miami, are going to be there, but there's some cities that might not be on this list based on the profession that you choose, right? So you have paramedics. So the most popular cities will be on the list, but not every city is going to be on the list if you're thinking about like violent crime. So here we go. Let's look at how much you're going to be left over annually. So Vallejo, California is number 1, then Fairfield, Redding, Modesto, Yuba City, Sacramento. Look, this is why we're in Sacramento, right? It says that the median salary is $137,000. The home prices are $453,000. Again, these numbers have gone up since July, or maybe actually they've stabilized. They're probably down, but the interest rates are much higher than 6.77%. And yeah, so annually, after your mortgage payments are made and your taxes are paid, you're left with $55,739 in Sacramento. But let's say on average, if I'm working in the Kaiser system, this is how much I'll bring in without working any overtime. Let's say I'm working 20 hours a week. This is how much I bring in. So if I were to work more than that, I would be making a lot more than $137,000, which means I would have much more than this $55,000 left over. And you also have to think about the fact, like, you might have a partner who's also making a lot of money or who's making a decent amount of money. So you're going to be left with way more than this amount that you see here. And, if you guys are comparing your salary here to a salary in another state, you also have to take that into consideration, right? Then we have Fresno, California. As you can see, like, most of the higher paying cities are going to be in California, and you're going to be left with more money at the end of the year and at the end of the month, at the end of the week, if you're working in California, Northern California specifically. Because if you see here, all these cities are in Northern California. All right, the next best state that you're going to have is going to be Texas. And again, I'm comparing just these 4 states. So it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different cities in California before Texas even came on the list. If you look at it though, it's not that much of a difference. It's 53,544 as opposed to, like, let's say 67,000. Yeah, I mean, it does make a difference. Like, that's $14,000 difference. But then if you keep scrolling down, you're going to see it's Texas and California, Texas and California. And then you have Elmira, New York, Niagara Falls, New York. And if you keep scrolling down, you look how long it's taking me to get to Florida. Finally, I found the first city in Florida that's going to be at the top of this list. But in this city, I'm only going to be left with $38,933. And that's because the pay is not that great in Florida, and the cost of living is not as great as people make it out to be. And these calculations, this is the median salary, right? But this calculation here takes into account the taxes that you pay. So even if you don't pay state taxes in Texas or in Florida, you're still only going to be left with $38,000 because your money is going to be going towards your mortgage and your living expenses. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more like it, make sure you click on this playlist here and subscribe to us for more.